This is Coach Lee, and in this video, I'm going to talk to you about how to understand your ex after they broke up with you. Take a quick second and click the subscribe button below so that you can be notified when I have more content that's helpful to your situation. And that includes mindfulness, attraction, marriage, and getting your ex back after a breakup. So after a breakup, one of the very confusing things that most people tell me when I'm on a coaching call, they'll say, I just don't understand. And it causes a ton of frustration because what they're not understanding is that what used to work doesn't anymore. It makes no sense. Things you used to say that would get a positive response from them, now it's as though you're speaking another language. Things you used to do, like giving them gifts or sending the thoughtful text, do not seem to have the desired result. If anything, you're pushing them away. And when people are desperate, sometimes they do some pretty interesting things to try to get their ex back. Just put your hand on the screen, touch my hand, and you'll get your ex back by tomorrow. Desperation can be the great killer of logic. And I understand that. I'm not trying to make fun of you, but I am trying to lighten up the situation just a little bit and help you see that just because you emotionally feel something or want to do something or react a certain way, it doesn't mean that that's the best help for you. And that by leading with your mind and your brain, even though you don't take your heart out of it, you lead with your mind. That's going to be your best bet. So one of the ways that I explain this to people so that it makes more sense is if you think of technology that we have today, phones, laptops, electronic technology, if those were all wiped out, if somehow there was an electromagnetic weapon that destroyed them and the people who had originally created them were no more, what would we do? We can't just recreate a phone or a laptop. It's not something where we just go out in the woods, chop down some trees, take enough time, and we'll just make another one. We're pretty much out of luck. If you were stranded on an island and didn't have a phone, you couldn't just recreate one from the rocks and the seashells and call for help. And in that situation, when you don't have what you used to have, when you don't have what you used to take for granted, it can almost seem like it's magic. And you just regret so much that you don't have that capability in your hands anymore. And that's a lot like what it is when you're dealing with an ex after a breakup, when they have broken up with you. It does not seem like you can recreate what was there. And though that's frustrating, that's actually the beginning of understanding, and where you can actually make some progress on this is getting that, because then you won't be trying these things and basically beating your head against the wall and appearing to your ex that you're out of touch by trying the things that used to work, which is a big mistake. A lot of people will try to do those things thinking if I just keep doing it enough, it will remind him. Or if I just keep saying that enough, it will remind her and I can get her back. I wish that were true. I really do. And so a lot of people will further be confused at why won't my ex work on it? Why won't they give it a try? It doesn't make sense. People will even say, whatever happened to the days when people would be loyal and would work through things? And I totally get that. That is the correct way of thinking, because relationships aren't all magic all the time, though we wish they were. Oftentimes, you will have to lean on that commitment because things won't be great. And you will have to rely on your ability to anticipate a better future after the work is done. And at the same time, knowing that the work will never be done. You will always be working on your relationship. Except maybe in those early days when you're experiencing limerence, and I have a video explaining limerence and the fireworks of a new relationship. I'll link to that in the description below. Now, be sure to check out my emergency breakup kit. I have a link to it in the description below as well. It's the culmination of my 20 years in the relationship recovery service. It can help you get your ex back. It's the best guide that I know of. So why won't your ex work on it? Well, most likely they did. Most likely your ex went back and forth. Do I leave? Do I stay? And they probably felt they wanted to leave, but they talked themselves out of it, saying things will get better. And when you're not married to this person and that level of commitment is not there, that would require you basically to do some work to at least give it a try, because it's difficult to end a marriage, not just emotionally speaking, but legally speaking. And so people have more effort to think of it as long term and put more work into it. There are always going to be people who lack that desire to work on it and who just give up too easily. And I'm not necessarily referring to those people. But usually this did not happen overnight, unless there was just some terrible action on your part, like cheating, or a terrible fight where you said terrible things. Usually it's been weeks, months, or even years where this person has gone back and forth in their brain thinking about it. Do I want to go? Do I want to stay? I'll work on it. And they talk themselves out of it, and they come back and they try, but they just keep feeling like it fades away. Either their feelings towards you, or they may say, I'm not in love with you anymore, or the feelings faded, which is usually them trying to explain what happens when limerence fades, and it always does. And from the shells of that limerence, that infatuation, should come commitment, companionship, and a sense of family with this person. But that's not always the case. However, people who expect that those chemical highs will remain forever are usually very sadly mistaken. And they will go try to find it with other people and basically become addicted to new relationships. Again, more about that in my link to the video on limerence in the description below. So, your ex decided that they would break up with you, that they just didn't feel it anymore. And by feel it, I mean emotional attraction. It's not that you physically are unattractive now, because if you were physically attractive to them at the onset, which most likely you were, because usually the other person at least passes our eye test, and that's sort of the foot in the door to emotional attraction and acceptance. And so it's most likely not that. But emotionally speaking, their attraction fell. And that's where the desire to work on it is not there. You see, if you're really emotionally attracted to this person and just have this connection and passion for this person, you can have arguments, you can have frustrations, and you will find a way to work on things, even when there are issues that come up. Just like, for example, with people in long distance relationships, and they'll tell me, eventually, I think that the distance just got to him or just got to her, and so that person broke up with them. And I'll say, no, it's not the distance, because when they first started dating you, they would drive 6 hours or whatever it was to see you or to meet you halfway. What changed? Their emotional attraction changed, and then driving that distance was not worth it as much. Their motivation fell, and we can interchange the word attraction and motivation, basically, at this point. And so that's why it seems like you're speaking another language with your ex, and why the things that used to work don't work anymore, as though you don't have the technology anymore and you don't even know how to recreate it. And so trying to force it is going to push them further away. Trying to force interaction, trying to get them to tell you how they feel all the time. Have you changed today? Do you feel it today? Trying to keep the lines of communication open because you think that will be better for you. Those kinds of things actually just make the situation worse, not only because it's a reminder to them that it doesn't feel right when they interact with you, that they still don't feel that emotional attraction like they used to, but also because it shows them that you are still wanting to make this work, that you're easily gotten back, that if they did change their minds, you would be there waiting for them. And so they don't have to really come to terms with a true decision. They can kind of even think, well, if I change my mind, she'll still be there. Well, if I change my mind, he'll still be there just waiting to get back together with me. And that's not what you want them thinking. You want your ex to truly experience the breakup. And that means that they have to realize they are going to lose you, that you will move on from this, that you are strong enough to move on from this at some point fairly soon. That way, they have to really come to grips with what it's like to be without you. Because if they think you're easily gotten back, they really don't feel like what it's like to be without you. They just feel like that it's temporarily paused and that they could snap their fingers, get you back. That's not really a loss at all. In fact, it's like gambling with someone else's money. There's no nervousness, no concern there. And so you want to give your ex the breakup. It's the best thing that you could do to have a good chance of getting them back. Give your ex the breakup. That's where understanding your ex after the breakup is so important, because your ex thinks that they want this breakup, but it's all just in concept right now. You have to actually let them experience it for them to really know that they want it. And sometimes that's where, just like in the situation of technology, where how many times do we see people just toss their phones in the back seat, treat their laptops like they're invincible, And basically, just like technology is no big deal, but then if they really had to go without it, they would realize they were taking it for granted. And that's where your ex needs to see that. They need to see that they were taking you for granted, which a lot of that is what happens when, especially if you're talking about someone who feels as though there is this ongoing issue or several issues that bring down emotional attraction, which they couldn't put that into words necessarily. But when that's going on, you tend to take the person for granted because those issues bother you more than being without the person. Again, I refer to the case of a long distance relationship. The distance is an issue, but when attraction's high, it's no big deal. You can overcome it. And so what happens is that over time, sometimes the issues can weigh on us to the point that we take this person for granted. And that's true with any issue, whether it be bickering, whether it be letting yourself go physically to some degree. And I still stand by what I said earlier. If you were attractive to them at the onset, you probably still are. But if you let yourself go in some ways, that can be a small factor just as far as making the emotional attraction fall. So it's one of those odd things where a drop in physical attraction can cause a drop in emotional attraction. And when coupled with other things over time, it can lower their motivation and cause them to take you and your love for granted. So you are dealing with someone who does not value you or a relationship with you as much as they used to. That's why it seems like the words you use that used to work don't anymore. It seems like you're speaking another language and like you're even talking to another person. Because in many ways you are. You have not dealt with this person when their emotional attraction for you was this low. So your experience with this person now is all backwards. Everything you know is wrong. So you can't rely on what used to work. It won't work anymore. You're going to have to learn how to interact with them differently. And at the moment, that means you back off and you leave them alone and you let them experience the breakup, because that's when some loss, some sense of potential loss can cause them to truly evaluate the situation. Because if they believe they could remedy it at any second, they don't have to really take the situation seriously. For example, do you know of people who speak more kindly to strangers than they do to their own family? Maybe they're very impatient with their mother or with their father or with their spouse or their kids, but when a salesman randomly calls them on the phone, they are just the most polite person you've ever met. That's because when you are intimate with people, and I don't mean necessarily only sexually, I'm just talking about when you are intimate as far as you love this person, they love you, they know the facts and feelings of your life, you have history with them, you are intimate in that way, you feel like you can mistreat them and they will still be there because they've proven that to you. That's not all a bad thing, but it's not all a good thing either. They have started taking their family for granted. Whereas this new person, because they don't know the limits, they don't have the experience, this new person could just up and leave because there's not that history and that sense of commitment. So they're kinder to this new person. They don't take them for granted. That's probably how it was at the beginning of your relationship. It's not that way anymore. And it's probably not as bad as you're thinking in terms of it's not just that this person is really showing their true colors and this is how they will treat you in the future if you two get back together. That's not necessarily the case. So the key is to renew attraction. And to do that, first of all, you have to create the fear of loss. That is, that stranger, they don't know if that stranger could just up and disappear. They have to, in some ways, feel that for you. That what they're doing could cost them you. And you may think, why would they care? They broke up with me. Why would they care if they lost me? Well, because they didn't lose you. They left you. Very different. Your ex has to know that they could lose you. That puts you in that category that the stranger got to enjoy when your ex would speak to him, because most of us are that way. Most of us are more polite to strangers than we are to people that we are more intimate with. And so while you wouldn't be a stranger to your ex, you would get the benefit of your ex not knowing for sure if they could lose you or not. That's the opposite of them taking you for granted. And to do that, they have to lose you a little bit. You have to back away. You have to take yourself away and give them the breakup. It's not fun, and I talk about it a lot more in my emergency breakup kit, and you can get more information about that in the link below. But it is something that if you want your ex back, you almost have to do. As a matter of fact, I'm just going to say you have to do it because 99% of the time you have to. Sometimes it takes longer than others, and it doesn't always work. But in order for your ex to no longer take you for granted, they have to have that moment where suddenly the technology no longer exists, or at least there's a threat that it could no longer exist, and they realize they can't just recreate you, that they could lose you and never have you again, and that's where they can finally learn your true importance. I have several other videos on the no contact rule and giving your ex space and what to do when your ex contacts you, so take a look at my channel for those videos or check out my emergency breakup kit. This has been Coach Lee, and as always, thank you for watching.